Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Graham Spicer, and welcome to Sunday evening OpenMicVO. So glad you're here and joining us this evening from a very hot Toronto. So I apologize, I don't have my normal makeup and stuff on. Usual ground rules apply tonight. The first one being, please keep yourself muted if you're not actively participating in the conversation. There's a little green microphone icon button in the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom meeting window, and you can just toggle your mic on and off by clicking on that little microphone icon. The second thing is that we post recordings of OpenMicVO to YouTube. So keep that in mind if you're going to share any information with us tonight. Don't share anything that's confidential, because once it gets posted to YouTube, there's very little control over where it might end up. And the third thing is please treat everybody respectfully here tonight. Let's keep things positive and forward-looking. This isn't really a forum for bitching and moaning, so let's not do that here. You can bitch and moan about how hot it is. That's the only thing you're allowed to complain about. With that said, OpenMicVO, you can talk about any topic at all and ask any question at all as long as it relates to voiceover. So that might mean it's a technical question with regards to your home studio. Perhaps it has something to do with performance and tips on how to perform a specific genre of voiceover. Perhaps you're just getting started and looking to ask some general questions about, getting started in this awesome business. Any questions are welcome. I'm going to start unmuting people here. So again, once you see that you're unmuted, you can either start us with the first question of the evening, or please mute yourself at your end. Okay, who wants to get us started tonight? The first question, first observation, anything to do with voiceover at all, more than welcome here tonight.
Hey, Graham, I've got one for you. I just, my neighbor's kid, young guy, 23 or so, we were just idling, talking. I'm new to the neighborhood, and they asked me what I did. And I said, voiceovers. And he approached me probably 3 hours ago and said he was talking about that with a friend. And she said his female friend wanted to get into voiceover. And I kind of explained a little bit about but what guidance would you give somebody who did just like, oh, I'm curious and I want to do this thing? And where do they start? What's the path of somebody who says, yeah, I'd love to do voiceovers?
There's a couple of good websites out there. I think that it might even have been Bob Bergen, but somebody has written a website like, so you want to be a voice actor or something like that. And I can't remember exactly what the URL is, but maybe someone here on the call remembers what it might be. And that's a good place to start, because it's a kind of very serious Q&A about, hey, it's not all glamour to get into the voiceover biz. And it paints a fairly realistic portrait of what being a voice actor, looks like. So maybe if someone here is familiar with what I'm talking about, either pop in and just say it, or pop it into the chat box. That would be helpful. The second thing is that there are some resources out there that are paid resources that are pretty good about getting people started in the business. And one that I would direct people to is my former employer, which is Edge Studio. David Goldberg runs a pretty good organization over there when it comes to a place where a, brand new newbie to the business can, get their feet wet with an introduction to voiceover class. The investment's like $99, I think. And it really gives them a good 4-hour overview of what the business is all about. And it gives them an opportunity to actually perform for a coach, and the coach gives them a little evaluation the next day on how they did. So edgestudio.com would be another place I would send people if they had general questions about it.
I hadn't thought of that. Thank you. That's a great place for them to start. Thank you.
Another place I would recommend is the Global Voice Acting Academy, GVAA. And I think it's voiceacademy.com or something like that. Anyway, the GVAA is a place I would also recommend that they might want to check out. They've got some good resources on their website, including, of course, the GVAA rate card, which is really, really helpful. Gravy for the Brain, How to Become a Voice Actor. James Romick threw it into the chat box. I hadn't thought of that, but that is awesome. And Stephen Gonzalez, of course, remembered the website I was speaking about. It was D. Bradley Baker, who's a phenomenal character actor in Los Angeles. I want to be a voiceactor.com. That's the resource I was thinking of, and it's awesome. Globalvoiceacademy.com. That is the website for the Global Voice Acting Academy. Just unmuting a few more people here. So once again, the resources, Edge Studio was someone I recommended. James Romick recommended Gravy for the Brain / How to Become a Voice Actor. And he wrote it into the chat box so everyone can see it there. And D. Bradley Baker's website, I want to be a voiceactor.com. And then the globalvoiceacademy.com. All great resources for people just getting started in the business. Okay, the next question. Who's got something for us tonight? And James Romick, very helpful, James. Thank you for providing us with some further information there. Sean Allen Pratt is a very, very well-known coach in the audiobook area, and he has a video that's on YouTube all about getting into the audiobook business. Who else has got a question for us tonight or a comment? Something
that video is actually sort of like a test that you can take for yourself. If you're thinking about doing audiobooks, to realize that it's a marathon and not a sprint. But there's also things like vocal stamina. You're going to be in a booth for 45 minutes to hours at a time recording. But this is a simple test that Sean gives, and he's developed this years and years and years ago, just to see if it's something that you'd like to do. If you don't want to sit in a small space and talk to yourself for 2 hours at a time, you're probably not going to want to do audiobooks.
Yeah, certainly audiobooks are a marathon, not a sprint. That is for certain. Who's got something for us tonight? Who here has bought a new piece of equipment lately and wants to tell us a little bit about it? I can tell you, I just recently bought a Neumann TLM 102, which is the smallest of the Neumann microphones. And I love this thing. It's teeny tiny. It takes up no room in my booth, and I have a very small booth, so that's pretty cool. And I think it sounds great. I think it sounds better than the TLM 103s. So any of you out there who's doing some mic shopping, make sure you put the TLM 102 on your audition list, because it's pretty fantastic, and it's a pretty good deal. I think at most U.S. retailers it's $6.99 or $7.49, something like that. And yes, Dave, better than the 103. Awesome mic. Just unmuting a few more people here who've joined us.
Graham, I have a question.
Hello, Paula.
about. Hi. Um, I have a question about improv and how important it is to be good at improv if you're involved with voiceover. I'm my voiceover meetup just this last week had a workshop on, and an improv instructor came and kind of helped us with it. I realized at the time that I really don't like it. And I don't know if it's just because I'm really intimidated by it, but I just was wondering, is it something that I should try to get over that, or how important is it to be good at improv?
Hi there, this is Steven Gonzalez. How you doing? Okay,
Good.
basically improv is essential, especially if you're going to be doing something like commercial work or audio or animation or something like that, where the director can ask for multiple takes using multiple styles. So they may say, well, that was a good take, but can you do it this way? If you're already got the improv chops, then you're already thinking about the second or maybe even the third way of doing this script, and you'll just be able to pop it right off your head. And it's somewhat
Okay.
a help to them, and they'll call you back if they like what they hear.
Yeah, improv is an acting exercise. It's not necessarily something that you're going to do in commercials. Sometimes you will, but what it does is it trains your brain to think fast and on your feet rather than getting locked into a certain read. When a director comes at you, there is a famous casting person in New York City who will ask you in the booth, can you give me something else? And if you pause for a second, you're dead. You have to say yes, and you have to come up with something. That's what improv is all about. It makes you think fast. It trains your brain to think very quickly.
And I think it's also about getting you outside of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
And I think that's the very thing that I can't remember who it was. I think it was Paula. It's the very thing that you find intimidating, and that's because it's taking you outside your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
I took a couple of levels of improv training with the Second City, which has it's a very big thing here in Toronto, and I was doing great up until the point where they wanted us to speak gibberish, just make up nonsensical words, and it's impossible as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how anyone does it. But, it was important for me to make the effort and to try and to develop some skills at it. And it really, I was embarrassed. You're in front of a group of people who aren't judging you, but, you've got to learn how to do exercises outside of your comfort zone, and improv is one of the best ways of doing it.
And a lot of people misinterpret improv as being, we have to be funny. That's not what it's all about. It's creating a setting, it's creating a scene, it's creating a situation, it's giving things that are going on in that situation. It's not necessarily coming up with something funny.
Okay.
But the intimidation part of it is, and it's like the rest of VO. There are genres in VO that you probably wouldn't be good at. I mean, that's just it. Not everybody's a jack of all trades. And it's the same with improv. Not everybody's a jack of all trades in improv. So in Graham's situation, have a conversation in gibberish is just not something that comes to him. So he's not good at that. But he's probably good at something else. I mean, he's a very positive kind of guy. And one of the rules of improv is you never say no, but you keep on building on what's been happening previously.
Yes, and.
Yes,
exactly. And basically you're leaning into your vulnerability too in improv. And it's one of those things that whatever comes out of your mouth comes out of your mouth. I mean, you look at some of these improv comedy shows, and you'll see them say something, and all of a sudden they get that look on this face like, what did I just say? Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that.
Yeah, if you get a chance, pick up Tina Fey's book and either read it or listen to the audiobook, because she narrates the audiobook. But she goes into her experience with Second City. And these people fall on their face. They go out, and do their routines out on the road. And, you could have like 3 people in the audience and all you hear is, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but that's part of what improv is. You can't be afraid to fall on your face.
Well, I think it's all about letting you fall on your face and not feeling judged about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's giving yourself permission to fall on your face, basically.
Exactly.
I do it in my everyday life.
Well, I do it all the time too, but I think that maybe part of the whole intimidation is thinking that when you said it's not always about being funny, and I think that maybe I had that kind of struck a chord in my head that maybe I'm thinking that I have to be funny in it, and it has to be like a funny scene whenever I'm trying to.
No, I mean, look at a Robin Williams routine. Things go from beginning to end, and there is a beginning, middle, and end in some of his routines, even though the middle of it is just pure nuts. Mm-hmm. But there is an emotion involved, and there are some routines that he did that just tug at your heartstrings. That's not funny, but that's improv.
Okay.
Stephen gave us a great resource for improv with regards to voiceover, and that's Rebecca. I think she pronounced her name's Huff. Rebecca Huff and Company, improv.vo, and that was posted in the chat box for anyone who's interested in learning more about Rebecca. That was a great question. Thanks so much, Paula, for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Who else has got something tonight? Some information they want to impart, some new info with regards to a performance technique, a piece of equipment that you've recently acquired and you're excited about. Who's got something to offer to us tonight? I know there's more questions out there. There's I'm looking at the list of attendees tonight, and there's some new names in the crowd. So if you have any question whatsoever about the voiceover business, don't hesitate to ask, and we'll be glad as a community here to do our best to answer it for you.
All right, I'll dive into this. And this is probably going to be a really, really, really technical question that I'm probably going to get crickets on, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I have 2 different interfaces. I've got a Scarlett 2i2 and a Yamaha AG03. And when I want to run Reaper, and I can have RX6 running at the same time with Reaper, to do some modification to the waveform. If I'm using the AG03 interface, it will not open both programs at the same time. It gives me an error message, but the 2i2 interface does not. And I think it's something in the driver for those interfaces, because even if I open something like Studio One, I can't open more than one program up using the AG03 interface. So I'm wondering if it's the driver.
The only thing, well, first of all, Stephen Gonzalez is on the line tonight, so Stephen might very well have some input for us. And the only thing I can think of is that the AG03 has its own set of
yeah, it's got that thing where you can put effects on it too.
That's right. And I don't know whether that little application that it installs, whether that in some way impacts the ability to open up more than one application at a time. Stephen?
I'm thinking that that's probably it, because I tried 7 ways to Sunday to get both of these things to work, you know, handshake with each other, and it just kept on getting error messages. So it's sort of forcing me to go back to the other interface. Not that I wouldn't do that. It's just that I'm working with the AG03 right now because I'm just sort of testing some things out, and I'd really like them to talk to each other.
Yep. James, are you on Windows 10?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
I hate Windows 10.
Well, the thing is, with the AG series, they don't work well with Windows 7. It does what's called stuttering. So every third or fourth frame of audio will be dropped, and it'll just stutter. With a 10, I haven't had any problems. Multiple apps hitting it at one time. It does sound like the driver. You may want to go with the latest Yamaha driver. There is a website. I'll look for it.
Yeah, there's a driver that's on the Yamaha website. That's the Yamaha Steinberg driver.
Yes, but there's 2 versions, and you may have the regular version as opposed to the beta version, and the beta version seems to work a little better.
Okay.
So
Okay,
I'll
thanks.
look for it and see if I can post it in the chat.
Great, thanks.
And James, if you're not using the processing that Yamaha provides, maybe try uninstalling. Like, the driver obviously has to stay there, but if the app is uninstalled that provides the processing, maybe that might be of some assistance as well.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, I really have to kind of troubleshoot this thing, because it's just something. I really like the interface because of the clarity and everything, and the mic that I'm using is really cool. It's something that you can't find everywhere. It's a Studio Projects C1, which is a really, really nice mic. It's heavy as hell, but it's a really, really nice mic, and it's cheap. But you can't get them anywhere. I had to find one on eBay. And it's got a really nice sound for what I want to use it for. It's just that I would really, really like Reaper to talk to RX6 at the same time.
Yeah, and the thing is also, you can have the driver without the DSP. I've run it fantastically without. I've done with, because there are some times that I go on conferences or whatever. I'm on a laptop in a hotel this evening, but normally I'll have the compressor on during conferences like this, and so it's helpful. But whenever I'm recording, then I turn all that stuff off.
Right. Do you use the compressor on there just to keep from clipping on the other end?
Yes, that's all I do.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
James, you need to buy a Mac.
I can't afford to go through a whole nother platform. When I started out, I wish I'd started with a Mac, but I didn't, so I have to settle for this.
I know, but RX6 goes straight into Reaper's effects when you have a Mac.
Yeah, no, the effects work fine, and they talk back and forth. What's the one thing that works with Pro Tools? There's a plugin that works with Pro Tools. The way I have it set up is that I have RX set up as my primary alternate editor.
Okay.
So I can have both of them open at the same time. And if I take a file and manipulate it in RX, all I have to do is go into File, Replace Original File, and it will replace the waveform. And then when I go back to Reaper, it just redraws the waveform, and everything that I did in RX works.
But James, do you have that setting in Reaper where it says the media items go offline whenever you get out of Reaper? Do you have that checked off?
I don't know. Is that in the preferences?
That is in preferences, and that might be what's going on, because if you don't unlock it, then that might be what's going on.
That's in the secondary editor in the preferences?
Not secondary, but in preferences, there's a thing in there that says whenever you're out of Reaper, to allow the media items to go offline, and usually it's checked. But if you uncheck it, then it'll keep that waveform open. And then if you try to go into RX6 as an editor, then it may, say, whoa, the WAV file is already open. I can't do this.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. It just seems weird that it wouldn't work with the AG03 and it does work with the 2i2. I don't know why. I'm trying to find out. I have Reaper open right now, so I'm trying to find that in preferences. Talk among yourselves. I'll look at this.
Fair enough.
Who else has got a question for us tonight? I know that there's some new callers here tonight, some new people that are joining us. I'm sure there must be some questions out there about getting into the voiceover business, something about your home studio, setting up your first recording studio. Any questions are welcome. Anything about performance?
Hey, Graham, that last very intense geek exchange there brings up a question. As an old school guy, goes back to razor blades and tape. There are many, many choices and lots of people who want to tell you that it's better to do digital and whatever. But I choose to use an art voice channel, a strip, which is got compressor and limiter and deep breath and equalizer. I like turning the knobs. I don't like doing everything digital in the programs. And I think what he just described there is one of the pitfalls of that. I like having all the processing off board, so to speak, before it goes into the magic box. What does everybody else think about that? Am I being too old school? Should I switch to the digital effects, or should I stick with the outboard effects?
Well, typically with the digital effects, the digital VSTs, you can either apply or not apply, depending on if you're, whatever DAW you're working with. And basically what you're doing is you're recording raw, and there is no inboard or outboard processing until you latch into it. And the basic rule of thumb for digital recording is, especially with VO, is you really don't want to do any kind of inboard processing and as little outboard processing as possible. So as far as tweaking the knobs and such, it's all studio technology. It's just as virtual versus, the three-dimensional boxy thing that, and I'm also old school. I remember that, razor blades and carts and all that good stuff too. Yeah, I mean, do as little post as possible, but there's still some call for it occasionally,
Yeah, I still have my splicing block up in my attic someplace.
There are some advantages to doing it the old school way, and particularly some of the big name voice actors in Los Angeles and in New York who are connecting to remote studios using ISDN and Source Connect. If you do all of your processing in Pro Tools or in your DAW afterwards, you don't have the opportunity to impact the sound of your audio as it's being fed out through Source Connect or being fed out through ISDN. And some of these guys are very particular about their kind of signature sound, and they want a very specific processed sound to be going out to their clients. So that is one situation. And it's not a common situation, but it is one situation where, fiddling knobs before it actually gets fed into digital is advantageous rather than doing it in the DAW afterwards.
Let me emphasize, I'm not doing a lot of compression or any of that stuff. I'm very, very gentle. There's very few knobs that are off of zero, and it's there's a tube sound to it. There's a connectivity. I don't have to worry about drivers. It's an interesting pro-con within the VO world, and Graham, you just hit on a good reason why some of the big dogs do the external processing. I don't know. I think it sounds better. To my ears, it sounds better than any VST. So that's where I stand.
Okay. Who else has got a question for us tonight? Don't be intimidated by all the geek speak. we can talk about any topic whatsoever as it relates to voice acting. So we don't need to get mired in geek if you've got a question about performance, perhaps, or about how to go about getting business as a voice actor.
Hi, Graham. I figured I'd jump in here a little bit. You know, you and I just mentioned that we both use the TLM 102s now. I got to tell you, I just had a session this week with Tim Tippits because I need him to help me dial in a good sound. I had previously worked with George Whittam, and I was primarily using Audacity at that time. And then I got the new microphone, and I was using Audacity and Audition, and I permanently moved over to Audition, and things just, I missed the sweet spot. I'm not that technical. I'm somewhat, but I also have history with the old tape and block. So I'm less digital than many, not most. Anyway, so I hired Tim Tippits, and I'm anxiously awaiting my chain and any and all things that he's going to share with me.
Tim is awesome. He really is. I'm just curious, why did you, given that you'd worked with George in the past, why did you pick Tim for this one?
Good question. Just wanted to try him more than anything else. You know, I just wanted to, it's a different app I'm going to be focusing on. So I wanted to try someone new. Nothing other than that. I love George.
Yeah, he's awesome. They're both fabulous resources. I think you can't go wrong with either of them. I was just curious.
Can I explain what George did to my sound? Okay, Dave, let's see. He built me a chain for Audacity. Let me look for it here. Let me real quick, because I'm not very good at, as I said, I know these things, but on a kind of a tangential level. Here we go. Let me look at my chain. So he built me a chain of normalization with a high pass filter, noise gate, a compressor, and a limiter, and again, with some more normalization. So he, I did a raw recording for him. I gave him, some room tone on both ends, and I gave him some raw recordings. And based on that, he worked his magic and put his touch on a sound chain for me, a processing chain for output, for Audacity specifically, and boy, oh boy, it really made my voice beautiful. A lot of problems that I have had in the past is presence. I don't know how to do that myself. I don't have enough skill, and I'm learning the skill. I'm taking a course or two on Adobe Audition. Actually, I have I've got a set of videos from lynda.com, and I'm considering spending some quality cash with Larry Hudson, because I hear he's fantastic. And like I said, I just wanted to try Tim this time.
Fantastic. How much, Dave's asking how much it cost you with George to do this initial.
George, I don't recall. I know George was under $100.
Yeah, I thought it was probably pretty reasonable. But to be fair, Tim Tippits is very, very reasonable as well when it comes to pricing.
Tim is more expensive, but I also believe between spending time with me and so forth, Tim and I will be taking more time together. So it's costing me a little more.
That's my point, is that Tim, his hourly rate may be slightly more expensive, but you buy an hour, you get two.
Yeah, exactly.
Tim.
Exactly. I mean, actually, again, I have no complaints with either of them. They're both fantastic.
Absolutely.
Oh, and I also have a Yamaha AG03, by the way. And
I've got one sitting here too.
Great piece of equipment. Absolutely. Well, that's all I have to say. So I'm cutting out.
Thank you, JD. Appreciate it. Who's got a question for us?
I've got a quick question for you, Graham. Has anyone noticed a slowdown in the last 3 or 4 weeks?
I certainly have. The number of auditions that have been coming into me from my U.S. agents has certainly slowed down in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I just attributed it to the typical summer slump. You know, everyone's on vacation. Anybody else notice it's been a little slower in the past couple of weeks? Craig, I guess it's just you and me, man.
Must just be us.
Hi, Graham.
Hey, Bev, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic.
I just spent the weekend with a bunch of VO women, and that conversation came up. And although it's not the same for everybody, there does appear to be a genuine slowdown across the board. Just to make you feel better.
Thank goodness.
It's not just you guys.
That really makes us feel better.
What was the get together that you were at, Bev? Was it a Voxy Ladies Conference or something?
Nope. Last year I decided to have some friends to my place.
Oh, fantastic.
And so I called it the first annual VO Ladies Weekend. And they loved it, so we had a second. And there was about 11 of us, actually.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, they came from everywhere from 7 hours away. Last year I had someone fly up. For those who don't know, I'm up in Southern Ontario. But I even had someone from California last year pop up. So.
That is amazing. And 11 of you, that's great.
It was, you know, what's really nice is to get, you know, I love going to conferences, and I love the conversations that happen in the hallway, so to speak, are sometimes the most beneficial. And so this is a group of people for me that, you know, we talk online, we see each other at conferences, but we got to actually sit down and get to know each other. And believe you me, we talked a lot of VO, but we talked a lot of not VO, which was really nice just to get to know everybody on a different level. It's a family, you know, it's a great community.
I got a question for you, Bev. I noticed this week where J. Michael Collins has sued voicesdotcom.
I saw that too.
And I was wondering what you thought about that and how serious you think this lawsuit is.
Well, knowing J. Michael the way I do, I believe it's extremely serious. And I don't think he would have done it if he didn't think he was right to do it. I know he has asked them to, you know, take his information off their site. And to the best of my knowledge, they did. And then somehow it came back on. And I think he's done it. You know, J. Michael, he does his homework. This isn't a flippant thing. So I don't know any of the details. I don't know the ins and outs, but I would think for him to go forward with this, it's probably pretty legit.
Yeah, I do know J. Michael fairly well, and I also know he's a shameless self-promoter, and I wonder if part of this isn't just about making noise out there.
You know what? Yes, but at the same time, really, is that the kind of, you know, are you doing it just to get the information out there so that, I mean, how is he promoting himself as somebody who sues clients? Like, you know,
yeah,
I think he's trying to get the message out that, you know, hey guys, that they're not following the rules.
Yeah, these are not good people. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's all it is.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested, I just posted a link to the article in there. It's fascinating reading. Basically, it boils down to they have been using his image and his marketing to market their product, and he had a cease and desist order, I guess, over a year ago that they've just chosen to ignore. He's also being represented by, and I cannot pronounce this man's name.
From Paglia.
Yeah, that guy. So he's in good company, and between the two of them, I think that they're going to shake up the industry a little bit.
Well, I think that it's good that someone's finally suing voices.com for something.
And I want to thank Stephen Gonzalez because I found that new driver. I just installed it, and it is working fine.
Wow.
Thank you, Stephen.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Who's got a question for us tonight?
I have a quick question here. Graham, how are you?
Hey, good, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you. I've mentioned before, I'm in the process of upgrading my studio, and it's come down to the question, am I going to go with a PC or move over to an Apple product, a Mac? And I know that's an eternal question that many people ask, but boy, when you have to decide, it is perplexing. So the main thing is, it seems like Windows 10 serves up a lot of problems for various types of software. So I'm just looking for some general advice.
I'm going to turn this one over to Stephen Gonzalez because, you know, Stephen, I know you've got quite a bit of experience with both Windows 10 and with the Mac operating system. What are your thoughts?
Well, for me, it's 6 goes one way and half a dozen goes the other way. I know many people on Mac will say, hey, Mac is it, you know, and then some people on Windows will say, well, Windows, give it another try type of thing. With a Mac, you're going to be more proprietary. It's going to be more specific in what you can and cannot do with the Mac. There are, on the plus side, some DAWs that are written specifically in Mac, like, for example, Twisted Wave and such. I generally avoid OS-specific DAWs, so I go for something like an Audacity or an Audition or a Reaper or whatever. On the Windows side of things, however, you're freer to build your box the way you want it to, as you know, beefy as you want or as sleek as you want. On the negative side of things, you heard me and James speaking about a driver issue. Well, in a Mac, like our friend Dan Leonard says, it just works. Whereas with a Windows product, Windows OS, sometimes it doesn't just work, although it is getting better. So it's all in what you want. If you want to lock yourself down and you're okay with that, and you want something that just works, then a Mac would be for you. If you want to do, I'll have a little bit more freedom as far as what you can put in your PC or what you can run on your operating system, then Windows would be for you. So I mean, it's either or. I mean, it's what you want.
Sounds good. Thanks, Stephen. I really appreciate that.
So we're ready for a fresh question or a fresh comment. What's new and exciting happening in the business? What's a job that you landed this week that you're particularly proud of? Questions or comments about anything to do with voiceover are more than welcome. Paula mentioned that she was just messaging back and forth with Tim Tippits, and he says hi to everybody on the call tonight. So Tim Tippits says hi. Anyone have any tips for getting political ads. When we've got the big election in the fall coming up, the midterms, and there's going to be lots of political advertising out there. Anyone have any specific thoughts on how to go about getting ads in this particular area? I can give you my one little piece of advice is get paid up front, because there's nothing harder than getting paid by a politician who didn't win. That's been my experience. Anybody have any suggestions, any advice on getting ads in the political sphere? Well, let's think about that one. Getting tips for getting political ads, and opening up the floor again for any question, any comment with regards to the voiceover biz.
I would ask if you're going to go into a political ad, does that sort of shoehorn you into an individual or a specific ideology or political party or a political issue where your voice is going to be recognized by others and then they won't hire you? I mean, what thoughts are on that?
I have done some political stuff here in Canada, and I've never run across a problem where someone recognized me from being associated with a specific political party and therefore not wanting to deal with me because of that connection. Although I guess now that I think of it, it's not like I would ever find out, would I? It's a good question. I'm not sure. I have had experience in the past doing ads for politicians that represent a point of view I don't agree with, or they belong to a political party that I don't support. I'm quite happy to take their money, and then I just donate the exact same amount to my political party in their support. So I'll happily do ads for the opposition. I just donate the proceeds to my party, and that's how I kind of deal with that moral issue. Anyone else have any thoughts on political advertising?
Graham, I've done a little bit of work in that department as well in Canada, and it kind of fell into my lap at the beginning, but what happened after that was the party that I did some work for spilled over into representatives in other provinces, and I got more work out of it. It's just sort of more of a comment, really, that if you can, once you get your foot in the door, if you can kind of work it, you can definitely capitalize on it for more work.
Did you have any issues getting paid?
None. No, they were wonderful. Yeah, nothing at all. All really good. But it might have been because of the party. I'm not sure.
Hi, so this is Blair. How do you get your foot in the door? Are you trying to contact the campaigns directly?
In my case, it kind of fell into my lap, Blair. It was a situation where a studio that had my voice in their library put me forward. I was chosen, and I just, was very professional. Actually, it was probably one of the more interesting recording sessions that I'd ever been a part of, because the candidate was there. He was the current premier of the province, so it was a re-election situation, and he and his entire security staff were there as well. And I was not allowed to speak to him or have any kind of contact with anybody within his group. So that was rather interesting. It was very serious, of course. And I think that they just felt that I did a good job. And, word gets around, it kind of travels a little bit. And, before I knew it, I was getting another call, but it was from a province away. So it was, I guess it was kind of a lucky thing, but it kind of made me realize that, you know, I guess it's like anything. If you do a good job, they're going to recommend you, and it's quick, it's easy, and it's done right.
I think
Referrals are always the best way to get new business. Absolutely.
Indeed. And I got the impression that, you know, these parties, the way that they kind of work is once they find people to work with, they tend to like to work with them again, because things are happening very, very quickly. Decisions are being made and remade over and over again. At least that was my impression with revisions. And I mean, that's not uncommon for sure, but you know, they're so particular about the final results. They really analyze it incredibly closely. That was my experience anyway.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's awesome. And good on you for getting that work as well.
Thank you.
Who else has a question for us tonight? Everybody must be exhausted after all the World Cup partying today. Cheering for France, I'm sure. I do just want to mention here while I have a moment that OpenMicVO, we're going to go on hiatus for 2 weeks. I'm going to be away for the next 2 weeks, next 2 Sunday evenings. So we're going to shut it down for the last half of July. But we'll be back again in August. And I'm thinking about making some changes to OpenMicVO for August. And I will be sure and bring you up to speed via email as those ideas start to kind of form and come together a little more distinctly. Anyone have one last question that you want to slip in before we call it a night tonight? Any other comments? Any other suggestions? Okay, well, we're a few minutes early, but we'll call it a night.
I came up with something for you.
Oh, what's that, JD?
Well, now you said we have a lot of new people online today.
We have several of them, yes.
Okay, so here's a question. Pop filter or no pop filter? Technique or assistance? That's my question.
I can't think of any time I've ever walked into a studio where there wasn't a pop filter in front of the microphone, but maybe that's because they didn't know whether I had the proper technique or not. Anybody?
Technique is great, but yeah, some people who don't have great technique absolutely have to have a pop filter. I know that it's, you know, for a purist, you want to be right in front of the mic and everything. But I mean, if you look at even singers and that go into studio, there are pop filters in front of them. So yeah, why not? It couldn't hurt.
Yeah, I certainly use one in every circumstance, whether it's, you know, here in my own booth or I've never been in a studio where I wasn't put in front of a pop filter. Anyone else have any experience with it where they didn't use a pop filter, or in your home studio environment you don't use one?
Well, I mean, it depends on the delivery and such for me. If I'm doing like an e-learning, or if I'm doing long form and I'm not necessarily to the mic, I'll kind of forego the pop filter. But if I'm getting really, really intimate with the mic, like, you know, a fist length or closer to the mic, then sure, I'll use that pop filter just to keep things at bay.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of them are effective. Some are more effective than others, and you're going to pay a premium for the really, really effective ones. There are some inexpensive ones out there that are pretty good. One that I found has like an inch gap between the two nylon meshes, which that inch gap is just enough of a buffer that will dissipate more of the air going through it than just a single filter.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for your participation tonight. It's great to have you here joining us, and it just doesn't work without you. So I'm so glad that you were able to spend an hour of your Sunday evening with us here at OpenMicVO. Once again, we're taking the next 2 weeks off, and we'll be back in August, and we'll be sending out emails to keep you up to speed on what's going on and when the next OpenMicVO is going to be scheduled for. So thank you again. Have a great week. Book lots of work. And we'll speak with you again in August. Good night, everybody.